One thing about these Anglo-Saxon churches, we believe that there's about 150 buildings in Britain that are either mainly Anglo-Saxon churches, or there's bits of Anglo-Saxon churches there. So that's what we're looking at. So anyone else been to any Anglo-Saxon churches? And it doesn't include you, Jessica. So anyone else been to any Anglo-Saxon churches? Anyone else?
Not to my knowledge.
I went to one in Whalley in Lancashire a few weeks ago. The original church was built in the 7th century, and it had 3 late Anglo-Saxon crosses in the grounds. So I don't know, would that be Anglo-Saxon?
Oh
yeah, no, that counts, because it's sort of, of course it counts. That's relevant. So that's what we're doing. Anybody else? Pete said no.
St. Carrington may well have been one. I'm not sure. It was 13th century, wasn't it?
Anglo-Saxon, we're going way back. When we're Anglo-Saxon date, we need about the 600-700. So I'm going to discount that one, Pete, because it's in my back garden, and I will be visiting that in my regular column in the Barham district in the near future. So we'll.
What about the one we ended up Highlight Park?
Well, right, no, Highlight Park is going to be is just going to be Norman, so that's not going to be Anglo-Saxon.
Okay.
Right. So anybody else with us? Roger?
No.
No. So there's only a small number of us who've actually seen these Anglo-Saxon sites. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to get back into these images. Let's just see where we are a minute. Hang on, go back to there.
Carl, come back.
Oh, where'd he go?
Home. Home we go.
Time traveling back to
We've lost him.
Take over, Jess.
Yeah. Oh, he's back again. He's back.
Oh.
Yeah, stay there.
He's gone again. I'll give him a quick ring now.
My screen said you were the host there for a moment, Margaret.
Yeah, that's what he said.
It says what? I'm the host.
Yeah.
The hostess with the mostess.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
I kept on having a cross coming up on the screen, and every time I had it on the screen, I pressed it off.
Oh, you silly man.
I definitely am that silly man, but yeah. Anyway, right, back to this. So around us, what we do see, we've got a great wealth of cut stone from the Anglo-Saxon period, and that stone can either be found, as Margaret said, in the form of crosses in church graveyards up and down Britain. So the Anglo-Saxon period, if you want to think about Anglo-Saxon reused material, would take us from the borders of Cornwall all the way through to the borders of modern day Wales and England, all the way up through to Lancashire. That was a good thing. Into Cumbria, reuse of material, and all the way up into Yorkshire. A lot of Anglo-Saxon stuff, a massive lot of Anglo-Saxon stuff in the likes of Essex, lots in Kent. So this is the type of genre that we're sort of looking at. Now, these particular stones from a particular site that we'll actually look at are actually been seen to be reused in a later structure. So a later structure that utilized all the Anglo-Saxon stuff was reutilized in a Norman and later structure. So that's the type of stuff that we're actually looking at today. So I know full well that this building is very familiar to us, the one in front of us. Now, it's very familiar to us because this building is the building at Bricksworth, right? At Bricksworth, near Leicestershire. Now, the one thing about the church at Bricksworth is that I have discussed it extensively, and I've looked at Bricksworth extensively in regards to the reuse of Roman material in the construction of Bricksworth itself. So that's one site that we're probably going to avoid a little bit of tonight, but it will come into it. Now Pete earlier on, and so rightly, was a bit vague about when the Anglo-Saxon period sort of is. So this is one thing I've got to define. So what is Anglo-Saxon? Anglo-Saxon is an architectural period, right? And it could be classed as an architectural period. Hang on a minute. And have we got that? Yes. So we should have Bricksworth in front of us. So it could be Anglo-Saxon could be described as an architectural period. It could be classed as a chronological period in British history. But now what we're actually starting to see is that the idea of the Anglo-Saxons is mainly come along from those people that dominated society. So we've got small groupings of Anglo-Saxons coming over from Europe. They go into a society and they say, right, we've got these new ways of doing things. Are you going to be Are you going to be on board with this or not? So this is what we're talking about. So in other words, it was a genre. It was a bit like the Americans in the Second World War. They bring over tights and Coca-Cola bottles. Some American soldiers stay. They have relationships with women and their offspring. That's what we're talking about in regards to the Anglo-Saxon period. But it's a lot more than that, because we've got a period from around the late 400s, 500s, 600s, 700s, 800s, 900s. That's sort of the Anglo-Saxon style and period that we're talking about. What we do see archaeologists referring to as Anglo-Saxon pottery, Anglo-Saxon weapons. They even talk about Sutton Hoo being Anglo-Saxon, and me and Jessica would agree that it's not really Anglo-Saxon, but it's a ship burial that was in the Anglo-Saxon period, even though all the artifacts on the Sutton Hoo ship burial seem to be from Sweden anyway. So it's a word that sort of opens up a number of different sort of hats and umbrellas, and it all falls down. So Anglo-Saxon architecture, a historical architectural period in England and in little bits of Wales. So we stop using the word Anglo-Saxon in about 1066. That's it. So the reason why we stopped using the word Anglo-Saxon in 1066 is because we're in a Norman period. So we don't refer to that period now after 1066. Anglo-Saxon buildings are still being constructed, but we're into a new period. So what we're trying to say is that it's the stuff that we're looking at, some of the stuff tonight is of Anglo-Saxon style. It's probably likely to have been carved or created by the Anglo-Saxons. But generally, we've got to be very careful with who actually constructed lots of the stuff. Now, one thing I will say is that the Anglo-Saxon period is very, very interesting, because most buildings, 90% of all Anglo-Saxon buildings in Britain, are going to be timber. We've only got one Anglo-Saxon church surviving in Britain, in Essex, which is made out of timber. All other structures that do survive are made out of stone. Now, one thing that I will say is that the Anglo-Saxons, and I realised this myself very much when I was building a wooden structure on the weekend. I remember, if some of you are aware, I'm building the toilet block down in West Wales. I'm doing a pretty good job of it, and I was putting the door frame up, and I just thought, right, I put the door frame up, and actually the way I've made the door frame, I've obviously got the frame of the door, and the lintel sort of overlaps, and you've got the two uprights for the door, and you've got the base. And I thought that looks like that looks like one of the trilithon stones at Stonehenge. And then I started realizing that lots of people are actually carving in stone, are actually doing it from a wooden carpentry background, right? It's very important that. Thank you, Andy. And one of the things that we do see with Anglo-Saxon work is it's very much timber, except in stone. Do you see what I'm trying to say? So what we're saying is 90% of all the Anglo-Saxon stuff is timber, and not out of that 90%, probably about 1% have actually survived, right? And the stone stuff, probably 2% of the 10% have survived, or maybe 3%. So this is what we're talking about. And inevitably, what we do see with the Anglo-Saxon stuff, it's almost as if it's carved by people who are used to carving in wood, but they're making stone structures. Yep. So this is really, really important. So, but this is why I don't want to do Bricksworth, because Bricksworth is a massive red herring. And the reason why Bricksworth is a red herring, because they're building Bricksworth using reused Roman material, right? Roger, stop yawning. I know it's boring you, but shut up. So the one thing about Bricksworth is that it's more or less it's sort of Anglo-Saxon local people with Anglo-Saxon influence using Roman material to try and build a structure out of stone, which is already sort of ideal. And it's Bricksworth is a very strange form of church. It got to be honest with you. Now, when we're looking at this nice little image in front of us, right? Again, what you do see, there's a certain porch, again, that we're going to look at, right? In this porch, lots of porches in Britain, right? This is another thing as well, as I know bouncing around on a lot of things. And this is one thing that I've probably mentioned before, that when you look at churches, in a British context, usually the nave comes first, or the chancel comes first. We've already had the debate. But the last thing that's constructed in regards to a church is a porch. Most churches in Britain didn't have their porches until about the 14, 15, 1600s. So any material lying around, the surplus to requirement, that might be Anglo-Saxon stuff or Roman stuff or whatever, is all tossed together to create this porch in front of us. So when we think about, well, this is the stuff lying around. So out of the 250 odd Anglo-Saxon place, there are at least 50 Anglo-Saxon churches that are mainly all Anglo-Saxon still standing in Britain, right? So you've got round tower churches, you've got tower nave churches, you've got all these different shapes and forms. Some use brick, some use stone, like Bricksworth, lots of brick itself. So the architectural characteristic of Anglo-Saxon ecclesiastical buildings is very much influenced by their own carpentry skills and what's around them. So they're seeing Roman buildings, and they're seeing the way that Roman stuff was constructed, and they're trying to sort of replicate that in stone, but using carpentry skills, which is really, really interesting. Lots of the mega Anglo-Saxon churches that once existed, other than Bricksworth, have been pulled down. So when we think about the original Westminster Abbey, that would have been Anglo-Saxon, but most of that's gone, right? So most of that's gone from about the 1050s, 1066. It's been rebuilt in the Norman style. Winchester had a really interesting Anglo-Saxon minster. So again, back to what I said, Anglo-Saxon buildings in Britain were generally simple, right? Most buildings in regards to early Christianity were quite simple. Generally, and the interesting thing as well is that this is a really interesting point. So I'm trying to cram lots of little bits in here. Generally, when we look at the Anglo-Saxons coming to Britain, they come across a building imposed on England by the Romans would have been startling and exceptional. And following the collapse of Roman society by about the mid-400s, there was a widespread return to timber building, a cultural shift that is not possible to explain by recourse to technological determinism. So what we're talking about is that people have just thought, oh, sod it, we're just building timber. It's far easier to build in timber. I've got to be honest with you. We're going to be on our third building in West Wales, and it's all out of timber. And I'm really enjoying building in timber at this minute. And strangely enough, I've actually built. Michelle turned up yesterday, and she said, I said, look, I'm building a turkey shed now in the garden. I think I'm getting obsessed by it. But the thing is, timber is so easy to build in, and when you've got these Anglo-Saxons, everything has to, all the chisel work on the timber has to more or less replicate what they're doing in timber. So timber is a natural building medium of the age, and you use that medium when you're working in stone and you're working in any other material other than timber. So in other words, everything's timber, but you're using stone, right? It does make sense, honestly. So again, it's what you're comfortable with. Now, this is rather interesting. This is very, very interesting. You seeing this really nice big on the screen? This is one. We'll just look at this snapshot, right? This is All Saints Church, Earls Barton, Northamptonshire, right? So if we move in and zoom in on, this is quite a famous image actually. We're just using, and the one thing is massively clear is that the Anglo-Saxon craftsmen who are actually creating this are almost building this as if they're building a hall, a timber hall. You can clearly see that it's not, even though the dress is actually stone, right? That clearly replicates carved timber, right? That replicates how you would carve in timber. Everything about that's how you would build a timber structure, except it's in stone, right? And there are restrictions. There are big restrictions. The big restrictions is that the Anglo-Saxons would have soon realised that you can't have huge spans in stone as you do in timber. So in a way, your large Anglo-Saxon halls made of timber, to be honest with you, if you can get the men and women to move the timber, right, you can have a hall which is huge, right? But you can't do the same in stone. You're going to jump in and say, yes, you can. No, you can't, because all those skills out of a stone like Stonehenge has been lost. And remember, Stonehenge is constructed by people 5,000 years ago who were actually used to moving timber around instead of stone, right? But because we get into the Roman period and people are no longer moving great big stones and so on, what they're doing, the Anglo-Saxons are thinking, right, we can't really have these huge halls made of stone, all carved in the genre of timber, right? So everything's got to be a little bit smaller, and the stone arches have got to be a little bit less, and the spans of the buildings are going to be smaller, or they can't be like our great big halls. So this is the thing that we're talking about with somewhere like Earls Barton. And what you can see is other sort of timber features as well. You can sort of see an almost shield like image on the left there, and it's very interesting that you do have this sort of linear nature to all of this. The geometry is really good as well. So it's and the other thing as well is this is another thing as well, that these are religious buildings. These are actually Christian structures. Now, ecclesiastical structures is Christianity, right? So in a way that there's something lost in the translation. And what's lost in the translation is that you find 1 minute that the Anglo-Saxons are pagans, right, by nature, right? So within a very short period, though, the Anglo-Saxons become Christian, right? So you've got Saint Germanus in about the why have I got that date 446 in my head, but it's there. And you've got Saint Augustine coming over 100 odd years later. I think I got the dates wrong. I might be wrong on that one, but we got Germanus over here anyway. And there's almost an appearance that we've got these Anglo-Saxons and they're thinking, right, let's go into Christianity, and they want to use their own skills to become emboldened in the Christian way, and they're just doing their best. And so this is the sort of end result. So this itself is actually at St. Michael's Church in Fobbing, Essex, right? And what you can see is earlier Anglo-Saxon attempts to actually use stone, and it's not very effective, right? And the reason why it's not very effective is because of this idea that let's try and get into the nature of what I'm trying to get at, right? So what you can see this window, right? And what you can see is the sill, right? And the keystone in the center, and it spaniels out, and it sort of creates this window. It's a relatively small window, actually. And this would be unusual well, because what we're talking about the Anglo-Saxons are used to building great big halls, right? They love building halls. If you've been to Weststow, right, they like building great big halls. It's what they did. The Anglo-Saxons were communal people, right? They like sort of the Anglo-Saxons were probably more communal than the Vikings. Those are the ones that should be in the film Vikings a bit more. But what we do find, I think what we do see is that the dress stone itself is actually quite crude pour stone as well. It's not when we talk about dress stone, right? That's your dress stone, but this is obviously Victorian. So over 1,200 years later, this Victorian stuff is put in, right? But I think the point I'm trying to make is that the Anglo-Saxons are not using the typical dress stone that you might associate with architectural detail, other than the example that we've just seen, where what they're doing is a mixture of getting some dress stone and using their carving techniques on it, right? So that there's a few things missing in the translation here. So if we go back there, that's what I'm talking about. And then with this example, they're using rough crude stones, so you can't get that type of detail. So that's what we're talking about. So if we just sort of keep that into our eye a minute, and I'll just go back to my little bits of notes. So what we do find is that the usual explanation for the tendency of Anglo-Saxons to build in timber is one of the technological inferiorities or incompetences of these people. But then again, that's not really fair, because they did give us buildings. This is what my notes tell me. Actually, not exactly what I feel. You probably know I don't feel that, but that's quite a crude statement, because the reason why that's a crude statement is that we've got more Anglo-Saxon buildings standing today, still in use, than we have Roman buildings still in use. So if you want to challenge 50 Anglo-Saxon buildings that are still used for surface today that are more or less completely Anglo-Saxon, and that's out of 250 that have got a lot of influence anyway, the Romans have failed. So in other words, it's almost as if the Anglo-Saxons are coming not so long after the Romans. So a lot more Anglo-Saxon stuff has survived. And it's probably because the Anglo-Saxon stuff was more familiar to the people. The people understood it, because this sort of timber way of doing things, this great timber way of doing things as kept with us. Now, in my notes tell me that there's a place called Mucking in Essex, and they're used to making these big halls, 15 meters long and 8 meters wide. Now, you know, I make little sheds that are 2 meters wide and 2 meters long, and I'm thinking that looks impressive. Do you imagine that, like 8 meters wide? These are big chunky buildings, right? And what we've got to think about is this sort of church architecture, a sense of historical, a sense of history with it, right? Have a little bit more of a look about this, right? But let's have a little look more at one more of these images, right? And this is actually this is Pritterwell parish church in Southend of Sea in Essex. So this is obviously one of the 250. And what is rather interesting there is that it's almost as if the Anglo-Saxon features have been kept integral to the church, but have sort of been made features themselves. I think what I'm getting at, right, and if you actually squint your eye, you can actually see some really nicely dressed stone on the left there, which I'll zoom in on as well. If the one thing that I'm getting at, right, is that within our mindset, we're closer as people to the Anglo-Saxons than we are to the Romans, because the way the Anglo-Saxons are building, using their timber skills to build structures, is what we've always done as a people. Whereas the Romans introduced these, as we've already said, these stone structures that are absolutely abhorrent, alien to us. But somebody would say I'm talking out of my hat. And the way I'm talking out of my hat is that, yeah, okay, right. But in Scotland, Orkney and Shetland, they are used to building out of stone. So just forget them. And then the rest of us see that building out of stone is really, really alien. And then what you can see there, you can see that would have been originally a full arch there. And actually the use of a lot of Roman material again, a little bit like Bricksworth. But what we can see is if we zoom in on this, I think it's lovely when you go to places like this and you actually look at the stonework, right? So I'm gonna experiment this with Pritterwell there, and hang on a minute, we zoom in there and we zoom in. You can see it now, can't you? There's all these bits of stone in that wall. Actually, to be honest with you, I want to come back to this. I want a better image. But what you can see is look at that there. You can see these really nice bits of Anglo-Saxon dress stone actually being reused. There you go. They're all over the place. Right, it's being reused and displayed as well. Right, so this is and you know what I've said before. To identify an old building, what you need to do, you need to step back, right? Let's just forget that a minute. You need to step back, and you need to go like this, and you need to look at that, and you need to say, right, the reason why that's old is because there's so much material being used in the construction of that building, right? You've got Roman stuff with the red brick, right? You've got lots of the Anglo-Saxon stuff reused, which is fab. You've still got Anglo-Saxon features on display there, which is absolutely even better, right? So is that, you know, you're probably getting it where I'm saying that you've got this sort of people have always loved the Anglo-Saxons, but they haven't been as much in love with the Romans because, again, the Romans are an alien civilization. And you know, I've got every right to say that. I've written books on the subject, articles, and all the rest of it. But I can say that. I love talking about the Romans, but I can't. Nobody can stand up in front of me and say that within the consciousness of Britain, people have preferred the Romans. It's the Anglo-Saxons that they preferred always. And this is what we're talking about. Claire Williams is back. Why is Claire go? I think what it is. I don't know what it is with Claire. Are you back there, Claire? Right. Anyway, that's Claire. Right. Let's talk a little bit more about this whole area. Right. So what? In a way, I think I've said this, but I'll say it in a more constructive way. The Anglo-Saxons were able to press the reset button, right? We all know that reset button, don't we? It's used a lot these days. We are now in the big reset, right? But this is the proper context for it. It's almost as if suddenly we've got a people who actually understand us. I don't like the Anglo Saxons, but I'm actually, I'm telling you something that is alien to me, but it's not alien because, I'm telling you something that's really obvious, right? And in a way, when we've Wales and Cornwall and Cumbria, and that is a good mix, are very different in regards to what survived in the archaeology, right? And I can easily put a line across the country, right? The reason why I can put a line across the country, Pete knows what I'm about to say, so don't say it, Pete, right? If you go to Cornwall, you've got early Christianity because of all those roadside crosses everywhere, right? There's loads of the bloody things, right? You could take one or two and take them home and nobody'd know they're gone, right? So you've got all this early not Anglo-Saxon stuff, wrong. You've got all this early Christian stuff from Cornwall. It's everywhere, right? And then you go to Wales as well. You go to West Wales and you've got all these stones that have the odd inscription, Latin inscription. You've got the Ogham script. That's all good. They're dotted in lots of bits of Wales. We've got about 50 of them. Cornwall's got 1 million of them. That's how we compete, right? But don't worry, Pete. Our language has survived. Yours hasn't. Anyway, and then what we then have. Oh, I don't mean that, Pete. I know it hurts. You missed out on the Welsh language, the Cornish language talk on the last Cornwall trip, Pete. And then we've got Cumbria. We've got the hogback tombs in Cumbria. And this is the thing, you see, all that sort of tying into the early stuff. I know we mentioned the hogback tombs as being sort of more Viking in sort of sense, but we've got some early stonework in Cumbria still, and that's what we're talking about. But we don't have those Anglo-Saxon churches, right? We don't have any Anglo-Saxon churches in Wales. We don't have any Anglo-Saxon churches in Cornwall. We have churches in Cornwall, Wales, and a few in Cumbria that have a little bit of early influence. There's not a great deal. And then you go over the border and you've got all these Anglo-Saxon churches all over the place. And I know I keep ribbing Peter, but we may have one more final trip to Cornwall at the end of next year. So don't worry, Pete, you'll be able to go on that just for you, Pete. So the Angles and the Saxons are a divide as well. They're a contentious divide. Right, they're a contentious divide between those on the left and those on the right. Okay, those in the western part of Britain and those in the eastern part of Britain. That's quite clear. And it's one thing. The one reason is that it's almost as if the Anglo-Saxons take Christianity more seriously than us. And the reason why, we've got our own Christianity, right? We've got our early Christianity in Cornwall, Ireland, Wales, Cumbria, and the Anglo-Saxons are pushing this new Christianity. You remember this? What I've said before? I've mentioned this word Roman Christianity and Rome's Christianity. Well, Roman Christianity is Cornwall, Wales, Ireland. Well, Ireland's a bit of a contention, and Cumbria, and then so that's Roman Christianity, the early Christianity, the earliest Christianity, the legacy of Rome. And then you've got Rome's Christianity with the likes of Germanus, and you've got the likes Augustine. Yeah, so it was slightly out with my dates, 597, but don't worry about it. Augustine comes over, and it's almost as if the Anglo-Saxons are converted overnight, which is really interesting. The reason why that's really interesting is because the Picts. There we go. We've looked at the Picts. We've seen Pictish stones and stuff. And one thing I didn't do when we were looking at the Picts is something that I always say when I look at the Picts, and I didn't do it last time. I know I didn't. Right? I always say that the Picts almost embraced Christianity like that. They just said, love it. It ties in with what we do. It's fine. It's lovely. Just slip it in there. It's great. So we see this with the Picts, and it's almost as if the Anglo-Saxons do the same. We love it. Christianity, bring it in you. It's great. It's open, right? Let's have a bit. We're having it, right? So this sort of, so what we do find is that, and then I think the Anglo-Saxon mind, or the Anglo-Saxon carpenters, or some of the local people, right? Because Anglo-Saxons don't wipe everybody out. It's just that they become the predominant people, and even though there's small numbers of them, they're great influence and power. Remember, the Anglo-Saxons fill a vacuum of aristocracy in Britain. Lots of the aristocracy have gone or dead, and lots of the common people continue. So in many ways, what we do see with the likes of Cornwall, Cumbria, and Wales is that there's a huge sense of autonomy from Anglo-Saxon influence. And it's only until a damnable Normans that we start to see major kick-ass problems in Cornwall, Wales, and then eventually in Cumbria. Right? It was because the Normans say, hang on a minute, right? We're going to have our new Christianity, but it's going to be even better than the Anglo-Saxon Christianity. And as for that Welsh Christianity and that blooming Cornish Christianity, we'll forget that, right? We'll kick it out into the sea, right? And this is what happens. Right, but with all that, it's really, really interesting, really, really complicated, and there's lots of really intriguing things going on. Now, what I should be doing is actually showing you the Reculver, right? And I wasn't going to do this. There's something known as the triple arch opening. That they think that Reculver Church is now being eroded into the sea. St. Mary's Church is now being eroded into the sea. And this is going to be rather interesting when I show you this. It's an Anglo-Saxon attempt in stone at using timber carpentry techniques to recreate. You'll see what I mean when I show you this now, right? Let's have a little look. But this is Reculver Church, St. Mary's Church. Let's have a little look at this. Okay, here we go. Excellent, Reculver. So you can see what I mean. You can see what I mean by this. They've Reculver Church. This is dating from about the 600s. So Reculver Church, important Roman site. And what we do find is that all those, what's on the left and the right, you can see this. You can definitely see this as Anglo-Saxon, because the Anglo-Saxons are trying to replicate Roman stuff now. As I've said, they're like Bricksworth. They're trying to do the Roman thing as well. So so what we've got there, we've got these beds of these Roman tile. So they've got that, right? So what they've done, they thought we're going to be grander than the Romans. So we're going to have a much taller column, right? We're going to see if we can do it. And actually, this actually worked. Strange enough, this actually worked. You don't see sort of one spaniel where you would do something like that, where you might find the Romans might attempt that, right? So what they're doing, they're simply saying, right, we do believe we can do this, and we'll do that. We've got the tiles, we've got a few restrictions, and the Anglo-Saxons managed to do that. So obviously they're well aware of the loads being displaced into these columns, which would be the same loads which would just be displaced into timber columns in regards to a great hall. So this is what we're seeing at Reculver. Unfortunately, most of St. Mary's is now retired, being recovered by Mother Nature and gone into the sea. Nice. So I wasn't actually going to do that, but I thought that gives you an idea that the Anglo-Saxons are a little bit more cheeky. They think they can do better than the Romans, and they did do better than the Romans, folks. I bloody can't stand the Anglo-Saxons. I'm really putting them up at stars tonight, right? But I got to be honest with you. I cannot be biased about this. I can't sit in the room and say, look at all the Roman structures still standing. Name 10, Carl. Right, okay. We've got Dover. We've got the Dover Lighthouse. Yeah, that's one. Good. Faffin. We've got Ravensglass. That was used as stable. Yeah, that's another one. That's two. Right, okay. What about, we've got Roxeter. Yeah, there's another one. And then somebody jumps in on, says, hang on a minute. Out of the three you've mentioned, how many are actually used for as buildings today? Oh, one. How many Anglo-Saxon churches, actually pure Anglo-Saxons, are still being used in the whole of Britain? 50. And then you've got another 200. And you're thinking, I've lost the argument. Right? So let's be fair. These Anglo-Saxon builders knew what to do, but it's quite substantial that they would have had. It's likely as well. It's very likely as well. Let's just not give all the credit to the Anglo-Saxons, right? I'm digging myself into a hole here, and I'm trying to get out of it. I can't, right? Because I can't stand them, but I'm now doing it. But the fact of the matter is, what would have happened is that they would have utilised local carpentry skills, the local carpenters and the local workforce to actually get the structures where they would need. And some of the workforce would say, well, you know, my ancestors remember the way we used to build this way, and it used to be out of stone and tile and brick. And oh well, we'll try and replicate that. So that's what's going on. So I think at that point, what we'll do, we've got quite a bit more after the break actually. So let's see if there are any questions. Hang on a minute. I'm gonna stop that share, and I'm gonna put something off on the oven. Hang on.
That church at Beetham's got a touch of the Anglo-Saxon in the lower parts of the towers.
Right, okay then, focus. Right, Andy, come on, let's have something from you, babe.
Don't really know what to add to that. I mean, like you say, we've got bits and pieces around here. They're all kind of, Hesham has got bits, and Heversham Church has got an angled cross. But they're all little bits. They've all kind of been demolished and rebuilt. And the only ones that I've come across that are anything like original are the ones down in I think East Sussex. They were, where they are very simple buildings. Or on the Isle of Man, you still get only the foundations.
Yeah. And they're usually much smaller on the Isle of Man, but it's just that
little kirks.
Yeah, exactly. Claire, anything you want to say, babe?
No, thank you.
All right then. Okay, cool. Right, Roger. Right, Roger's all right. What about you, Pete the Meat?
Well, I told a lie. I have been to an Anglo-Saxon church at Reculver.
You've been.
Some of it was still standing. Yes.
Yes. Oh, Pete, that's a bit of a shot in the blue. I've never known anyone who's been to Reculver. So it must be quite spectacular seeing the building being returning to the sea, and it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, but there was quite a bit of it standing when I went there. There were two towers.
Yeah.
And a doorway and a few bits and pieces, and the outline of the rest of the church was still there. The nave is the outline on the floor. You could see.
I think there's only one left now, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm actually having a look. I was just about to say that.
In there as well, but I don't
you would see it as you were going down the M2.
Yeah.
Actually, do you know what we're going to do? The good thing is we've got access to our internet. Well, you know, I can screen share this now. So we've got Reculver. Let's just. There you go.
That's it. That's where it was when I visited.
I'm pretty sure Andy's right. I'm pretty sure one's gone to the sea now. You can see how close.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
That one there on the left.
Yeah.
The Roman fort at Reculver.
Yeah.
I think it's just the one tower left now.
You know what, Andy? I'm a bit cruel. I want to see the one. I just want to see the one tower. It is the building that is at the site of a Roman fort.
So that's how it was when I went there, and that would be, oh God, 30 years ago.
I'm pretty sure Andy's right that there's one tower now, but I can't find.
It's a what?
There it is.
It's over.
Is that it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's all that's left now. Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, that looks about. Yeah, that yes. Yes, the one tower, the Rook over the North Tower. There's only one
Yeah.
left.
Yeah, say that the two towers were there when I visited. It must be over 30 years ago.
Yeah. It
I
wasn't that long ago it went, actually, only about 5 or 6 years ago, I think.
All
Exactly.
right.
I know this is a sick joke, but they shouldn't have told Osama bin Laden.
Well, funnily enough, they did test the bouncing bomb there with the dam busters.
Oh right, really?
Yeah, along the beach there. Yeah. The only live drop they ever did was there.
Oh God.
So
God.
that's probably had something to do with it.
Probably did. It probably did. Or it was Claire meeting all her boyfriends there. I don't know. What about you, Margaret?
Well, when I went to the place at Worley, the very old place with the 3 crosses, you could
Yeah.
see in one of the crosses there was a hole because they'd used it as fence posts
Yes,
on the farm.
yes.
So yeah, they reuse them for all kinds of things, and that they've been put back, and they've all got different heads and different shafts. But they've got carvings on. They're quite clear on one of them, particularly.
Yeah.
Can you bring them up on your screen?
Yeah. Walney. Is this Walney?
Worley. It's the 3 crosses. Worley's WH
WH. Yeah.
ALLEY.
Yeah. Wally Abbey.
No, it's St Mary's. But if you just put the 3 crosses at Worley.
St Mary's and Old Chain. Right, the three. Right, okay, 3 crosses. Right, here we go. Right, hang on a minute. They've got free fish.
No.
I've got free fish. All right, try this. Hang on a minute. Here we go. Yes.
Yay!
Well, I got one. Don't. Hang on a minute. What we got? Hang on. Church graveyard. There. Yeah.
That's quite clearly marked.
It's seen better days.
Yeah,
But
but these are about 10th century. They're quite late.
they're still old.
Oh, yeah.
So, we can only see one of the crosses. A bit of a bugger, isn't it? Well, hang on. What we usually do, if you go on Wikipedia, you can usually get it up. Hang on, let's just see what. Right, here we go. Right, here we go. Warmly. Right, there's the one of 3.
Mm.
Only got the one there, which is a bit of a shame.
It looked like it was another one in the distance. No, it's not.
They were
No,
very
it's not.
close together.
No, it's not.
They were all quite different.
Quite different. You
Yeah.
know what? As in the Carry On film, the Monty Python film, he said we're all individuals, and Pete says, "Well, I'm not."
When the Vikings came over and they turned to Christianity, did they build any churches?
No, I think they just occupied the ones that were there already.
Did they?
Yeah.
I've never heard of any.
Mm.
And then when the Normans came, did they just demolish everything and rebuild?
Well, most of the big stuff, the like Westminster, they demolished. Winchester. That Winchester was a beautiful Anglo Saxon, but that went right. So the big stuff they demolished. Yeah.
Oh, stinkers.
And the one thing that I'm particularly interested in is the is the monastic orders in Cornwall, would have been Cumbria and Wales before the Normans got to Britain. And to be honest with you, I'm struggling to try and find anything, because the thing is, right, what we're talking about, you're talking about these monastic orders being completely replaced by the Benedictines, the Dominicans, the Cistercians and Franciscan. These are all French orders mainly, right? And you're thinking, well, these are actually not these are not original British orders, right? So what exactly happened to these monks? The Normans introduced the Dominicans, and oh right, by the way, right, we're the Dominicans. You local monks with your crude Christianity can all bugger off. You're all out on the street. Or did they kill them? I don't know. I can't find any information about this at all. Because
the Vikings would tackle the monasteries because they knew there was something to rob.
But what I'm talking about, Pete, is obviously in that period when the Normans, all that's done and dusted. We're looking at that, yeah. But what I'm talking about is all those monastic orders that existed before the Normans, because we're always told how religious Britain was before the Normans, and we've got the proof with these Anglo Saxons, right? So what's happening? And there's so much missing. There's so much missing, and yeah. I kind of actually what I'm going to do.
It's more popular.
I gotta get something a minute. Hang on, stay there a minute. What are you doing there, then, turkey? No. Right, the turkey's decided to come in the house. He's sitting in a seat. Right, do you want to see the turkey? There he is. Hang on. There he is. He's sat there.
Oh.
There's the turkey. Right, hang on. Can I just share this with you? Michelle's bought a book from the United States, right, which was published in Wales. We doubt not that the natives of the Principality in general will hail with delight the appearance of the Cambrian Journal, a publication of a truly national character, being devoted not only to the illustration of our ancient literature, but also to the development of the natural resources of the country and the advancement of such arts and sciences as influence the duties and promote the comfort and happiness of domestic or social life. These are important subjects, and they deserve to be handled and set forth with becoming learning, skill, and judgment. There is hardly a country in Europe where there is a greater scope for the treatment or exercise thereof, or where we grieve to acknowledge they have of late been more miserably neglected than Wales. And yet the Welsh are by no means deficient in talent or good sense. They are an intelligent as well as an industrious race of people. We are persuaded that they require only the educational advantages which their neighbours possess to enable them to attain an equally high position in the rank of civilization. Devotedly attached as they are to old traditions and old associations, experience proves that they are not unwilling to adopt new appliances as soon as they shall have become thoroughly convinced of their superior value and true worth. And you know what? That can't be any different from back in 1846 than it is now. If anyone else got anything to say, Anne or David, before we have a break?
Yeah, it may be a silly question because I'm not very bright at these.
It always is.
but the Normans, the Anglo-Saxons were fine workers in wood, and they made sort of beautiful buildings. And I wondered why they sort of abandoned that, more or less, went to stone. I suppose is it just because stone is more enduring?
Right. Okay. I think it's exactly the same reason why people in the past went from timber to stone. Right.
Right.
And we're not going to answer that question because they did it in the past, and the Anglo-Saxons did it as well. So it's in our mindset to do that. That's our tradition.
Well, I went in Prague in the Czech Republic. I saw a magnificent, I think it was a cathedral, a really big church. It was a cathedral, all done in wood. Absolutely a superb. It had been there, very ancient. And I'm surprised that we haven't got anything of that, of the Anglo-Saxons left here.
Obviously not in timber. There is one Anglo-Saxon church which is actually in timber. But do you know what I'm going to do? I'm gonna show you an image of our Anglo-Saxon timber church. Hang on a minute, which is in Essex. I'm just gonna remember where this is. Hang on a minute. Yeah. Oh God, hang on a minute. Right, yeah, it's Greenstead Church, right? So Greenstead Church in Essex, right? And we'll just show you that this is the only true Anglo-Saxon timber church still standing in Britain. So we've got to have a look at this one now. There, bingo, there it is.
Oh, lovely.
Oh,
And interesting enough, you know what I said earlier on about keeping sort of the connection with the Anglo-Saxon church, right? What they've done, they've simply lifted the Anglo-Saxon church off the ground, and they've preserved it with a stone and brick base. So instead of just, did you see that you now see the point I'm trying to make, right? That people were so connected with this Anglo-Saxon stuff, and need I also say that people are so connected to the likes of Stonehenge for exactly the same reason as we're talking about with this Anglo-Saxon stuff, because there's a connection with it, right? But there's not necessarily the connection with the Romans. I love the Romans. But the fact of the matter is, it's not the same thing, right? You don't see this in a Roman context. You don't see people loving Roman stuff as much as you love Stonehenge and, for example, an Anglo-Saxon church like this. So yeah, I'm worn out now. You've worn me out, Anne. Right, and if Dave, you haven't got anything to say, we'll take a break. Right. Oh my God, why do I do it every single week now? That's like ages. I've been speaking for an hour and 10 minutes. Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay. We'll have a quick break. Back in 8 minutes. See you in a minute. Roger, you can't go yet. You ignorant Sassenach. I'll be back.
okay.
I wonder where the word Sassenach comes from. That's not an English word, is it? Sassenach.
Gaelic.
Oh, no.
Is it Gaelic?
Yeah. It's Scottish Gaelic. Yeah. I think it just means foreigner, I think, but I'm not sure.
I think the language is interesting because it's kind of morphed from the Old English into present day English, but there's still a smattering of the old Anglo-Saxon words, aren't there, that have just changed over time, and a bit of French thrown in, but no Roman, no Latin. That hasn't stuck around, has it?
A lot of the language is Latin based, isn't it? So.
Yeah, well,
Ambulance, things like that.
I was going to say cappuccino, but that's really silly.
to the point. Practical.
Cappuccino.
Chino. There's quite a few French words, aren't there, that we use?
Well, it was a book somewhere that they'd reckoned that Normans introduced 10,000 words into the language.
10,000, wow.
10,000. That was according to Bill Bryden. So,
I wonder if there's anybody who can speak that oldie English. There will be a professor.
Well,
yeah,
yes,
there'll be somebody at Cambridge University.
People that have only, even Alex Roberts, has spoken it as they thought it should have been.
Yeah.
But who knows exactly? Sounds.
I hadn't knew a chap who was in the book club I was in who could speak ancient English. You know, yeah. He was
very strange, to us.
Yeah.
I think.
Very learned sort of man.
Well, the dictionary changes every year, doesn't it, with new words?
That's right.
Popular words. So going back 100 years ago, we would have sounded still obviously understandable, but there would have been a lot of words used then that we don't use any longer.
I always think it's strange how we change words that we don't like the meaning of, if you know what I mean. So you'd have a word like cripple.
Yeah.
We don't think that's a bad word. So we think of something else. And gradually, where is it now? Something challenge. And it's gone through about the same thing happened with the water closet. We didn't like that. That became, you know, it's sort of a, it happens with lots of these words that we don't like the meaning of. It makes us uncomfortable, whatever the meaning is.
Right.
I think that's quite strange how fast that changes.
Yeah.
And people like the euphemisms, cover it up.
That's right.
House, you could never say somebody was
they talk about passed away, don't they? Not died.
My mother always said, my mother always said fallen, which I thought for her that sounds ancient.
She always said what?
Because her mother was older.
Yeah.
Fallen instead of pregnant.
Oh,
And I
fallen.
used to better say pregnant.
Yeah.
Fallen. Oh, she's fallen. I used to say, Mother, did she hurt herself? And I used to say, no, this is stupid.
Yeah.
I said, well, say the word.
Yeah.
You know, in school, you talk all these like talk the word, talk to my sister on something, tell me off. I said, what did I say? We don't use that word. That word. Oh, and then fallen. I thought, that's 1800 someone.
Yeah, I heard of that one. Or fallen.
Talk about covering all that as if it's something disgusting.
Do you go to the toilet or do you go to the loo? Roger, do you go to the toilet or do you go to the loo?
Lavatory. Toilet.
Do you say toilet?
Well, you wouldn't go to the water closet anymore, would you? Even
Never did.
Or even the lavatory.
No,
I mean,
the toilet, that's it.
But Americans call it the bathroom.
In America,
powder room.
The restroom or something.
Americans always say the bathroom.
Yeah, the bathroom. And then there's the powder room. The powder room, if you really try to be polite.
My mother and grandmother used to work in the textile mills in Yorkshire. And because the machinery was so very loud, they used to have to open that, they call it memoing.
Yeah.
And they just have to exaggerate.
Yeah, and
you know, how are you?
Yeah.
Have you been?
Yeah.
And they've got, and my mum used to talk like that all the time because she'd got into the habit.
The habit of it, yes.
Of memoing, as they call it, that she never got out of the habit.
A bit like Les Dawson and his mimicry. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Oh, wasn't he funny?
Especially on personal things. Oh, she's got a big.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You think, what the heck are they talking about? You try to guess.
Yeah.
Yes,
I wonder if more acceptable meanings last a long time. You know, you think of how quickly these change when the meaning is not liked. And how long a word can last if it's very acceptable. And I don't know.
Well,
I've never thought of it that way.
Toilet came in from the French in the 18th century when it was popular to speak French and all this.
Yeah.
Toilet, you wouldn't say anything. Toilette or in toilette, you know, and all this. It's a sort of the new being wonderful thing. A rabbin used to call it anything else. And in Welsh, it's a tea bar.
It's what?
Which means tea bar.
Tea bar.
Tea bar, which means small house. So if you wanted to talk about small house.
Oh, the smallest room.
You have to see another form or something, but otherwise I think you're talking about the toilet instead of somebody's small house. He lives in the toilet. Good gracious.
Well, can you believe? I mean, Agatha Christie wrote the book 10 Little Nigger Boys, didn't she?
Oh.
10 Little Nigger Boys. Yeah. And I can remember my mother going into...
The song, wasn't it? There was a song, a rhyme you did with children, 10 Little Nigger Boys. And then there was 9 and that sort of, yeah, I remember that. I can't remember the details of it, but I
It
remember
seems
that.
so shocking now, doesn't it? But that was only back in the 50s.
Mind you, I remember when little Black Sambo.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah. Come on.
I remember when Little Black Sambo got banned, and
Yes. Yes.
I managed to get a copy of it, and I read it to my, because I taught in a school that was suitable, and I read it, and the children loved it, and we had it regularly. I never got caught reading it, but I thought it was the most wonderful literature for children of that age. When they have such rubbish literature, you know, that's off the telly or something, and that was just wonderful. And I think it was wrong to ban it, because it didn't. It made the Little Black Sambo very clever, and you know, I couldn't understand what except just the names. That was all that was wrong with it. The story itself was well written and good literature. So I read it to my school. I shouldn't have done.
Agatha Christie's 10 Little Nigger Boys, they've had to change the title of that, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's all nigger from Negro, which is Spanish.
Well, nigger, I think nigger is offensive, isn't it?
But then you become.
Yes, to a certain extent, of course it is.
No, because of the way it was concept it was used.
Yeah. But nigger is offensive, isn't it, to black people?
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose.
Oh yeah, very.
You've got to be careful where you're using that. But as I say, the Little Black Sambo book, I couldn't see quite what the thing was, why that was.
No.
He's doing a John again.
I remember when I was little, I loved my gollywog.
Yeah, I did. I had a gollywog as well.
Right.
I loved gollywog.
The troops in the war. Wog, you know,
my wife knitted gollywogs, but then the pattern was you couldn't get the pattern. But they still do them in Australia.
Yeah. Really, children love them, and I didn't think anything of it. I suppose the word wog,
it was just
the word wog would have been offensive to lots of people.
I know a funny story. One of my friends owned a shop. She was underneath cleaning the shelves, and all of a sudden this man said, "Excuse me, do you sell gollywogs?" She stood up and she went, "How dare you say that word? Get out of my shop." And as she turned around, she noticed he was 6 foot and black. And he called it a gollywog, and she was gobsmacked. And she said, "Why are you calling it that? That's offensive." He said, "I've always called it that since I was a child, and so has my mother."
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, my friend's a mechanic, and a fella used to come round with tools, a black fellow, and he used to say to him, "What are you doing today, David?" He said, "Oh, I'm just doing this here." He said, "Hey," he said, "blacks wouldn't do that." He was
I was teaching in Barry, and we were up in the Castle pub, and we were upstairs teaching health and safety, and we always gave them tea and coffee at the break time.
Yeah.
And we stopped at the break time. I turned around. I said, "Oh, take this down to Packy's and get some milk." I gave, but he was wearing a turban.
That's okay.
He didn't seem at all moved by it. He just said, "Yeah, okay, definitely got the milk."
Accepted it.
Yeah.
Well, where I lived in Ambleside, there was just one black man called Brian. He was a builder, and everybody called him Black Brian. He called himself Black Brian, and he was just one of the lads, you know, part of the community.
The village I was born, there was only one black person. That was Darky Pasca. And he was Darky Pasca. And he was quite happy with that term.
Well, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I think we've fear being offended so much nowadays.
We do.
There's so many people that fear being offence.
Yeah.
And there is no offence intended or.
No.
That's right. I got told off once by my daughter had some friends come. They were married. She was white, he was black. And they were a really nice couple. And of course, they were friends in my daughter's house. I had no intention of offending anybody, of course, in that situation. And we were talking about children. And I used the word half caste, which.
Oh.
Right. And it was, I didn't know any different at that time. It was some while ago. Anyway, I was corrected properly by her. She said, you know, they're called
what was that word? Sorry,
mixed race, half caste.
Oh yeah.
And then she said they're called mixed race.
Yeah.
Now that was some years back, so it's probably something different now again because these things change.
Talking about Megan and all that, they're saying the baby has, or are they of colour?
Well, many times my
yes, but this was about children who are mixed with you know, two different coloured parents. And now they're called mixed race. Was I was told that was what, but it's probably different now because that was a few years back. Right. It keeps changing.
My surname's been shortened to Sambo many times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that would happen. But you know that it's as to say what's intended. You know, and respect people for what they are, what they do.
The way it's said.
Everybody's known because what they call Pakis are mostly probably Indian or Bangladeshis anyway for the city. Okay, little point. But the thing is, it's used to put them down. But they work hard and do their thing, fine. So what's wrong with that?
Well, I don't think it was an insult. I mean, all the Cornish people, they call them cousin Jacks or Janners. The Scousers, we call them Scousers. The Geordies, we call them Geordies.
Like I went to Liverpool once doing some work as a student, they call you a taff straight away. Pick up the accent.
Well, that's it, don't you? Yeah, you're Welsh,
I
you're
didn't think that was offensive. It's offensive. Why?
I suppose though, when you've got some words like nigger and that, and when they called coloured people boy, or you know, rather than give them their I mean that kind of thing would have been very offensive.
I would never call anybody nigger.
Anybody really.
No.
Although the film bombing the dams.
Yeah.
What's his name's Bader's dog was nigger.
Yes, that's right.
Yes,
my boss at work called me nigger in the woodpile one day. You know, you're the nigger in the woodpile. Because I caused some problems.
No, right.
There's an expression in Welsh, working like blacks.
Yeah. It's interesting though, isn't it, that you can get called a Scouser, or you can get called a Geordie or a Taff, and nobody's offended by that.
No.
And yet other words.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah. Other words, you know, are offensive for some reason.
And even in the family that
they're thought to be offensive by some people.
Yeah.
It's like that chap when I said the Pakis, he wasn't offended at all.
No.
Yeah.
In our family, when I learned Welsh, even though they were English background, I became a taffy, a taff. And I said to my uncle, I've always been a taff, and I speak the language as well.
Yeah.
On that note, we start flipping heck. I don't know where I am now. Right, okay.
It's that Jippo, isn't it?
I'm a Jippo, thank you very much.
That's right.
No. You can only I can call a jippy a pikey, right? You can't call me a pikey.
Diddycoy, you're a diddycoy.
Yeah, that's a good one, Pete.
A diddycoy in Wales.
Shut up, Pete. Nobody wants to your opinion. Right, okay. This is like last week. I started to do the second half. Claire, we will see you soon, darling.
Yeah, bye. Enjoy.
Take care, lovely. Bye. Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye, Carl. May see you tomorrow. Maybe.
What the hell's going going
Bye,
on?
Rog. Yeah, you see, as soon as you come back, they go. We were having a
Roger,
lovely
Roger,
conversation.
darling, I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow.
But with luck, unless I got my man comes with a new phone and I got to set that up. Anyway, see you around anyway. Take care. I won't be here next week because I'll be away with Gillian.
You'll
Okay,
be away with Dillis?
Gillian.
Gillian.
So,
Is
okay,
she
Have a
so?
nice time.
Roger, is
Bye.
she fit?
Bye, Rog.
Take care,
Bye,
Rog.
Rog. Bye.
Be
Rog,
good.
Rog, do you know
And
what?
no
We
bad
need to.
word.
I need to see a photograph of this Gillian as well.
Okay then, it's on the way.
Do you know Bill's got a bit of crumpet, and the photograph is in the next newsletter.
Crumpet, that's the advisory word. No, sorry, can't say.
Bit of crumpet.
Bit of crumpet.
Can't
Right.
call them.
Okay. Right. Let's get on with it.
You
Let's.
can't call females,
See ya.
okay?
Look, shut. Look. I didn't even ask you. I didn't. I really didn't even ask you, Andy. Right. I really didn't.
Objection.
Objects of crumpet.
Look at that image on the bottom right there. That's awful.
Oh my God. It looks like those cartoon drawings of Over the Garden Wall, actually.
Oh, yes. Kill Rod.
Oh,
I'm thinking it's a big nose.
no, it's not what you think it is.
No, it looks less like a goat now than it did before.
Yeah. Oh. Right. Are we getting on with this? I don't even know whether we. Oh,
Yeah,
God.
go on.
Most of it's
What you
built with undressed stone, except for
Yeah.
pieces like this, which have been
Yeah.
preformed and used in the construction. But the rest of it's built of rubble.
Now, the thing is, I think you've hit upon straight away, Pete. They're reusing the nice Anglo Saxon stuff, but
Yep.
Pete said they're using crap, right?
Yep.
But I think they appreciate what's there, and I think that that's
Absolutely.
that is the point we're making. That is the point we're making, right? So anyway, back to a little bit more of this. Back to hang on a minute. Just try and get my notes up here because right. So hang on a minute. Oh God, hang on a minute. I just hang on. There you go. I knew what I was doing a minute ago. Oh right, here we go. Right. So yes. So there's something that there's a hell of a lot that I still want to do, but whether we're going to get around to it, I just want to do some individual stuff really. So what we've mentioned is that Margaret, I think it was Margaret, who was asking about, is there any timber churches? And we went to the wonderful Greenstead Church, which was quite appropriate. And I think the point that was actually being made about the Danes as well. So let's just look at this one. So the Vikings, the Danes, the Norwegian Vikings, or whoever they are, marked a period of destruction of many Anglo-Saxon buildings. So we're told. However, massively and interesting enough, most of those Anglo-Saxon sites were rebuilt. So I think we need to recognise that. So we lose all this early Anglo-Saxon stuff, and they rebuild it, which is really important. So we do see, for example, that there's a site known as St. Peter's Chapel at Bradwell on Sea, which is a Roman fort. And again, that we're not going to show you an image of that because that would be another lecture. But the one at Bradwell is basically, again, the reuse of a lot of Roman material at a former Roman site. So I wanted to mention specific identifications in regard to how to identify diagnostic features in regards to Anglo-Saxon churches. And obviously, again, the reuse of material as well. So we'll go through all these. We'll come back to these in a moment, right? So what I want to do is these little bits. Okay, hang on a minute. Where's that other thing? Hang on a minute. Hang on. There's a slide missing, which I'm not happy with. Hang on a minute. Let's just see where this slide has gone to. Because this slide here is very important. Why? Just double check. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm using right. Okay, let's just get off the screen a minute because I was using the wrong slides a minute. Let's just let's get back to this. Right. Okay. I want to do a bit of a diagnostic. So were we seeing this on the screen? No, we're not because I'm not screen sharing. So So here we go. This is in Lincolnshire. Yeah. So what I'd like to do is a tiny little bit of a discussion. So diagnostic features. So as we've mentioned, I've mentioned over 250. There's actually 267 surveyed churches in Britain that have Anglo-Saxon features, and we know that 50 are clearly Anglo-Saxon in fabric and everything else. We've established that. So architectural historians used to confidently assign Romanesque architectural features to after the conquest. They used to give the Normans credit, right? But now we know that that's completely wrong. So one thing is that the coin stones in regards to you've got these big chunky stones, and this pick out the corners of these buildings, and you do see this very much in regards to lots of these Anglo-Saxon churches, or part Anglo-Saxon churches. You do find. I used to live in Crawley, for example. There was a church there called Worth Church, and you could see little bits of those long and short coin features. So what you have is you've got big blocks. So if we what we mean by long and short coin stones is if we get my little drawing on you, so we know where we are. I'm still getting my feet. So you've got these long lengths here, right, which are horizontal, and then you've got tall lengths, which are vertical. So this is a typical feature of Anglo-Saxon churches, particularly where you've got a lot of access to flint nodules, and these dress stones are obviously eventually coming into the church, unlike that earlier example where you just saw the window actually picked out in very rough stone and very flinty-like stone within the landscape that we were talking about with the other site. So if we sort of move on a little bit, and this is typically in regards to features in regards to Anglo-Saxon churches. You can see when you see Norman churches, they're more fatter and squatter. Anglo-Saxon churches like to express upwards. Again, that's in the genre of timber building. So, quite narrow, but you can actually build up, sort of that idea of timber building going upwards. And what you do see quite clearly there is those are the types of features you'd see in a timber building, where you've got these triangular arches. And you can imagine this being in a timber building. There's another triangular arch there. So you can typically see this in a timber building, but this is picked out in stone. Very, very important, that. So, and also you've got the idea of double triangular windows. And usually, again, the narrowness is in regards to the paucity of understanding how to build out a stone. Again, going back, they're using carpentry skills to use stone to create the features. So you're not going to have the wide arches that I said we don't see at the likes of a culvert when we actually drew that in there. So it is rare for more than one of these features to be present in the same building. A number of early Anglo-Saxon churches do have these expressions in one way or another. But there's something else that I need to chuck in here, which is a bit of a red herring. In fact, herringbone stonework. Now, that's one thing that I need to tackle before we tackle the direct examples that we've seen in the images tonight. And what I'd like to do now is, if I can remember, I've got the right slide, not that one. Hang on a minute. Here we go. There we go. And get off that. There. All familiar with this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, now this is going to be very difficult for me to put across, because I've got three little voices in my head. Now, one voice tells me that this herringbone, this herringbone patination. We'll forget the word style. The herringbone patination, where you've got the stone like this, and you've almost got that at angle. Yeah, so you've got the stone like that, and then it goes back again, and then it goes like that, and it goes back again, sort of, and then you lose the detail, right? So that's herringbone patination, right? And I think the ones at the bottom, that really screws things up for me, but forget about that, right? So this typical herringbone would act more or less like this all the way through, right? Now, we're told that that's typical Anglo-Saxon style of building. However, you've got two other voices, one on my left and one on my right. If we look at some Roman styles of building, right, you also see that in Roman styles of building in regards to Roman fort walls, and you actually find this as a core matrix of building in Roman structures. So what you might have some really nice dressed stone on the outside, and then you take away the dressed stone, and inside you've got this herringbone patination, right? And also as dressed stone on the outside. So it's a Roman feature as well. Yeah. So then there's another little voice saying, Peter, don't say it, but at a local church near me at St. Peter's Church, Cogan Hall, and I took Pete there one day. When we looked at that, I remember saying to Pete, look, I'm really suspicious about this being Anglo-Saxon, because the Anglo-Saxons didn't get this far. And lo and behold, 2 years later, they dug up around the church and they found out that the herringbone work was actually above stones that were laid horizontally, right? You know, normal horizontal stretcher core stonework, right? Yeah, go on, Pete.
But isn't there an example of that at Tinkingswood?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to get onto, Pete. That is exactly what I was going to go on to, right? The point is that the other voice in my other head tells me that archaeologists at later periods, in regards to St. Peter's Church at Cogan Hall in the Vale of Glamorgan, they used it as a reconstruction method that you could tell that in future generations people could see the original stuff, and then they could see the later stuff, which was picked out in herringbone style, which confuses us. And then Pete said at a local burial chamber near me, the archaeologist John Ward, when he was excavating in 1914, 1915, he actually reconstructed in herringbone the reconstructed bits above the normal stonework. So the problem is herringbone style work is not typically Anglo-Saxon. It's a style that archaeologists used to reconstruct sites. It's a style that the Romans used. But it's also a style that the Anglo-Saxons used at some of their churches, not all. So the herringbone is again a little bit of red herring. Sorry, it was a really crap joke. So what we need to do now, we need to go back again, and I'm a little bit wary of time today because I wanted to end a little bit earlier today, but we're okay, we're fine. So again, you're looking at this tall structure, and you can what you've got on particularly on the left and the right is later architecture. But you can see this tall sort of structure, and you can see these rather restrictive arches, right? But very tall structures indeed. So you can imagine this being a very tall timber structure, maybe. But it's quite narrow actually. This is actually quite narrow. This is St. Mary's Dear Church. This is St. Mary's Dear Church. This is at Corringham, right? And then we've got this example of coin stones at Stowe in Lincolnshire. So what I'm going to do now, doesn't that look awfully cute? We'll go on to that in a minute, right? So we're going to look at this. We're going to look at this first, right? We're going to look at these first. I know Andy got very excited. It had to be you, Andy, didn't it? Nobody else. I think Andy's become our new John, because John would have got very excited with that. So
Aaron's away.
What's that?
Aaron's away for the week. Sorry.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not saying any more. Now, this wonderful masonry that you can actually see in front of us is actually from All Saints Church in Bakewell in Derbyshire. So I wanted to mention the Derbyshire link, because obviously we're sending these churches further up north, and what we do see is the reuse of many carved fragments of Anglo-Saxon stonework that were sort of, which was found, and all that stonework itself, interesting enough, was actually constructed, as I said earlier on, in the porch. Yeah, so the porch is built later on. So you've got original Anglo-Saxon church, Norman period. The Anglo-Saxon church is like restyled and whatever, right? And you've got some early stone crosses, as Margaret mentioned at the other example earlier on, Walmead Church. And then you've got what happened is that you've got these piles of Anglo-Saxon stonework piled up somewhere, and then somebody discovers these and they build the porch. So they're building the porch in about the 1500s, and you know, it all goes in, and they found these by accident because they'd been rendered over, and they were exposed in the porch itself. And I think that's great, but it's not the only example that we've got where we've got the reuse of Anglo-Saxon stonework in a porch, for example. We do have another church that does see the reuse of Anglo-Saxon stonework in the porch, and it's a site known as St. Mary the Virgin Church at Bricksworth. That, interesting enough, is also in Derbyshire. Yeah, and as Pete would remark, John was the Derbyshire dope. Oh God! That Pete, I've never said that before, but you did actually say that. So yeah. So what we do find interesting enough, if we go on to the next image, right? And do you know what? I would love to. Okay, I'd love to. Okay, let's just spend a couple of minutes on this. So what you can clearly see is how this worked in an Anglo-Saxon church, and where all these were. We don't really know how this was formed. But naturally, these are really nicely picked out and reused in the porch. And in a way, it's almost as if, particularly if we get the, I noticed this earlier on. I wanted to mention this earlier on. That looks almost as if it shouldn't be carved in stone. That should actually be carved in timber because of the detail in there. That looks like it should have been carved in stone. But when you think about it, that looks like it's a timber object, but it's made in stone. That looks like timber as well, but it's in stone as well. That's a bit of a cross match, and this fits in somewhere else. But again, it gives you an idea of the expression that the Anglo-Saxons had, and why that was then reused in a porch. And interesting enough, right? I need to wrap my brains now, right? When we did the Roman period, reuse of material from the Roman period in the Anglo-Saxon period and in the medieval period, can I talk about a single example where the whole porch is made is the porch is being constructed out of Roman material? And the answer is I can't think of any. I know that we've got columns reused associated with churches. We've got bits of columns, right, but not in this level, right? And then what we do find, then again, we do find at Bricksworth. So we move from Bricksworth now. Hang on a minute. Oh God, I've lost my bearings. And what we need then. So we've got that. And this as well. And this is really interesting. Again, this is at Bakewell in Derbyshire. And again, this has all been put together to be used in the construction of the porch. And again, actually, lots of that could actually be influenced by the knotwork styles of the region, and you've got some sort of Pictish stuff going in there as well, with little bits of figures. Again, it's the subtlety of reinstating this genre from the Anglo-Saxon period. It's almost as if it's a hark back to something that should long since be disappeared from the consciousness, but it's brought back. Whereas the Roman stuff is almost more or less forgotten in most places. and you can clearly see that today. And then again, this is that church. You can't see any Anglo Saxon stuff in it, but look at this as well. So this is a little bit like a hogback tomb as well, but it's a little bit more garish than that. It's a little bit more. It's in your face, right? So let's go back. Let's go to my notes on this, right? So yeah. So did I say Bakewell? This is Bricksworth. So the church is notable for its Anglo-Saxon carvings and a large Anglo-Saxon coffin, which you can clearly say is here in front of you. It's a large Anglo-Saxon coffin lid, actually, and it's there being placed into the wall. And amazingly enough, it's there on display today. It's almost, and this has been in pride of place. It's not damaged. It's loved. Okay, again at Bricksworth, alongside the other carvings that we've seen. And we got this at Bricksworth, and what we do see is that this again dates to the period that the church was in full flow, not in the 700s, not in the 800s, in the 600s. And the church is noted for another really interesting carving, which I'm sure Pete will be very much into, right? And we're going to go to that now. It's known as the Towered Man, the oldest representation of a miner anywhere in the world from the Anglo-Saxon period. I don't exactly think that statement's true, because I'm sure we do have miners carved in Egyptian tombs. I'm sure we do, but there he is. Mm. You can imagine, Pete. You can imagine that could be Cornish. That could be associated with a Cornish mine. But there it is in Derbyshire, and this is the Towered Man associated with our Bricksworth. And again, this is Anglo-Saxon, and it's almost again it's been brought back into the old genre has been brought back. It's a bit like I don't know, listening to Beatles music in the car. It's a modern car, and your children are there, but it's listening to the Beatles music. You're bringing it back. And you bring the Anglo-Saxon stuff back because you're familiar with it. You're comfortable, but you're not comfortable with the Roman stuff. And I think this is what I'm saying. And again, thinking about these styles and thinking about all this sort of reuse and reinstatement of an old way that we're familiar with. Again, Bricksworth. Not Bricksworth Church, and again, you're going into. Do you know what? Right, I think I've got some of my slides mixed up. These are from Bricksworth, and this is from Bakewell. So the difference is I got the two the wrong way around, but they're both used in the Porches here. So that's the Bricksworth, which is associated with there's Bricksworth, and there's that at Bricksworth. There's Bricksworth. And then that there is at Bakewell. I got the two the wrong way around. But again, that's being used in a porch. That's being used in a porch. And again, they're reinstating the old values at Bricksworth. And there is this wonderful carving of the miner. So that's actually quite a nice end. So are there any questions on any of this today? Go on, Pete. I know you want to say something about this miner, so I'll keep this on for you a minute. Go for it.
The miner's fine, but the knotwork you showed in the previous slide was definitely Celtic, the same as my ring.
I knew you couldn't resist that. I knew you couldn't resist it. At Bakewell, the Porch carvings at Bakewell, exactly.
Yeah.
And there are actually lots more stone carvings in Britain, which I do want to show you again. There's another church that we haven't visited today, and it's a lot more than this being reused, but we'll come to that again. Right. Okay, thanks for that, Pete. Davy Baby.
Oh, nothing, thank you.
Thank you. And Davy, if you happen to go off quickly, right, I'm going to say goodbye now, but don't go off yet, but I'm going to quickly say that next week we're going to be doing something very, very different. And it's from North America. And think about Gettysburg, and think about Antietam Creek, and think about Atlanta. And we're going to be looking at the archaeology of American Civil War battlefields.
Oh, that'll be different.
So, Andy, baby, what about you?
Yeah, that herringbone pattern. Everything else is quite different, but the herringbone pattern is in Roman work as well, isn't it? So
yes,
it's almost like
in the
I'm
Colosseum.
kind of getting a feeling that they're copying stuff. You know, like you're saying, they haven't got a feel for the stone for some reason, and I don't know why. Because if you look at Orkney, they had that, you know, the corbelled roofs and things. They understood stone there much better than the Anglo Saxons did, because they're, like you said, trying to copy woodwork all the time, or like with the herringbone, a Roman pattern, which they must have seen, I'm sure. So kind of strange why they didn't develop any of their own.
But then again, Andy, why did they need to?
Yeah.
I think you'll find there's some herringbone in the Colosseum in Rome.
Yeah.
Again, I think the point Pete made about the stonework at Bakewell in the porch, with all that knotwork, and I Celts and all that stuff aside, it's not exactly Anglo-Saxon, is it? But it's obviously being replicated by the Anglo-Saxons, and
stolen by the English.
Oh, fair enough. I was gonna slap him down then, but I'm not. Right, okay then. Annie.
It's so racist.
No, thanks very much. Really good again. I'm sorry I won't be there next week.
Well, we're gonna send Drina around because she'll be around. She'll be, at least Drina will turn up next week. We will miss you. And Margaret, anything you'd like to say, and then over to Jess, quick.
I've got a book here, and I'm just looking at the Anglo-Saxon page, and it's a beautiful carving called Frank's Casket. Have you heard of it?
No, where's that? Well, we'll have a look now.
Frank's Casket. It's an early Anglo-Saxon carving made out of whalebone in Northumbria. Ornately carved, and it's depicting Roman scenes, the sacking of Jerusalem by Titus.
Oh, right. So that's going to be...
Is that gorgeous?
79 AD, I think.
8th century.
Look at that.
Isn't it fab?
Wow, look at that, yeah.
And that's all made out of...
whalebone.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't put ivory on there. It's obviously going to be whalebone, isn't it? Because it's large. And you've got the padlock on there as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
As the saying goes, well, I'll be hooked.
It's really nice.
That is really nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for showing us that. That is really nice. Yeah, you are right that there's the Anglo-Saxons seem to want to copy everything, except they've got the runic script on there. So there you go. Which isn't exactly Anglo-Saxon either. Oh God. Right. Okay. I've done the praising of the Anglo-Saxons, and now we shot them down. Well done, folks. Well done. That's fine. I'm happy with that. Jessica, quickly. Jessica's not there. Oh my God. She is there.
She has to be.
She has to be. Come on, Jess. Give it to us, baby. Oh, never mind.
Sure.
She got paid today, and I think she spent all the money on drugs. Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I shouldn't be saying that. That's defamatory.
Shut your mouth.
Oh, yeah, I should have said she'd been spent it all on alcohol. Okay, obviously, Jess is not there. I don't know why. Okay, so what I'm going to do, did I tell you what we're doing next week? Oh, yeah, I have, yeah. If there's no more questions from Pete, Dave, Anne, Margaret, Jess, and Andy, if there's no other questions, then I really appreciated that tonight. And I will see you all next week for something completely different.
Good night, all.
Okay.
Good night, all. Good night,
Good night,
David.
everybody.
Good night, Pete. Margaret. Miss you, Anne, already.
Bye.
And Andy, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Carl. Good night.
Night.
It's my pleasure.
Good
My
night.
pleasure.
Good night.
Take care, Andy. Pete. Oh, flipping Andy. Christ almighty. Are you there, Jess? If you're there now. I could have said you spent it all on fags, but I didn't. It's been terrible. Anyway, Jess, if you're not there, trying to speak and my laptop won't let me speak. Oh, don't worry about it, man. It's all hanging out and out. Good. Anyway, I'm gonna yeah. I tell you, give me a ring on the old dog and duck and dog and duck. Oh my God, dog and duck. Oh my God, it's all good. It's all good stuff, man. Smoking the weed. Anyway, Jess, I will sign off. Oh, you can, yeah. If you want to call me tomorrow, call me tomorrow. If you don't want to call me now, then fine. I'll leave it to you. Anyway, I gotta go. I will and keep being awesome, and I'm gonna sign off, and we'll speak to you soon. Anyway, goodbye everyone on YouTube. We'll all flow on the road. Cool. I'll speak to you then. Well done. See you then. Bye. Goodbye. Boo. Thomas the Tank.